first we're just going to get into a little bit about the class and what we're trying to accomplish throughout this month and what we're building up to in future months. All right, so here's just an agenda of everything we're going to cover today in the first meeting. So my name is Andrew O'Connor. I'll be your Project and Portfolio 2 instructor. I myself am actually also a Full Sail graduate. So I graduated from the Game Art program back in 2011, the very end of 2011, and I ended up getting an internship opportunity in the game design program. Turns out I was the only one applied for it. So if you get an opportunity, take it. Don't be above any job or any title. Just take something to get your foot in the door. And then that turned into a lab instructor position. I worked in Final Project for a while. So yeah, I'm a game art graduate, so I have a lot of background in modeling, animation, texturing. Maya is really my wheelhouse. That's really where I've spent a lot of my time. And you learned a lot of UDK and the Unreal Engine, then transitioned over, learned a lot about Unity, and really been developing scripting skills and a lot more to really become more of a technical artist. That's what I wanted to ultimately get to. So I've been teaching this class and working with the level design group, the as-core design that we're going to be getting into for about 2 years now. And now I'm in charge of this class and really been managing Perforce. So that's really one of the big things I want to teach you guys and make sure everyone understands it coming out of this class. So there's 2 tracks to this course, right? So there's going to be this technical track that's going on, and there's also going to be this creative track that's running along side by side in tandem. So you're going to have these technical assignments that are going to be challenging. You're going to be using Perforce, which is a very difficult tool to use. I'm not going to say it's easy. It's not just like Dropbox or not like using your iPhone or an iPad where it's very user-friendly. It's difficult. There's a lot of things going on. So you have to make sure you take the time to understand it and practice it this month. And it's a professional grade tool. Companies like Sony, Activision, big companies, big AAA companies use this piece of software. And that's not just saying only AAA companies. Perforce now has the opportunity for groups of up to 20 people. 20 users can have a server all on their own for free. So it's offering version control to smaller studios, to independent companies, and be able to collaborate in very useful ways. And that's why we use it, is being able to collaborate and have backups of our work in case anything ever goes wrong. If your laptop falls and breaks, or your hard drive crashes, or water gets spilled on your keyboard, if it's only on your laptop, it's going to be gone forever. But if you have it on Perforce, you're going to be safe, and everything's going to be backed up. So really just start to form habits. This is the month where I want to teach you guys some habits to get into and follow, and really start to develop a workflow when you're working in Unity to make sure that you're ready to work with a team on one project. So the end goal of this month, the end product you'll have that you're going to carry with you into level design is going to be your 2D top-down map. So it's going to be representative of what you're going to design and what you're going to build in level design, and you're going to carry that with you into Project and Portfolio 3. So for the on-campus group, you guys, this is a 3-month block because you'll be taking BFG and level design at the same time. Online students, you'll have 1 month separated because you take BFG and level design separately, but this is going to be a process. You're going to carry your work with you from this class into the level design. You're going to learn skills in BFG, which is building functional groups. You're going to learn techniques to actually be in a group and diffuse situations and learn how to actually put your levels together and not, want to kill each other by the end of the month, right? So you're going to learn these techniques, and then in DES 3 or Project and Portfolio 3, you're going to bring all of your areas together and build an actual level as a team. So it's going to start here with just brainstorming and the LDD, right? Like everyone wants to skip over this part, but this is really the first step, and this is where the design starts. Is first we're going to come up with a lot of different ideas for setups and interactions. Then we're going to hone those down and refine those and turn those into a clean document that's going to communicate our ideas and what our level is going to be to others. And then we're going to turn it into a flow chart or a level flow, similar to what you did in GD1, but this is a little bit different. This is focusing more on the mechanics of our level and how the player is going to progress. And then ending up with a final portfolio piece, which is your map. That's representative of what you're going to actually build in Unity. So definitely keep that in mind throughout the month. Everything you're building here is something you're going to design. So don't try and build something that's out of your skill set right now, right? So we've had some exposure to scripting and Unity at this point, and we're providing you a game template. We're going to give you a project template to start with, and you're going to design around that. So keep that in mind. You're designing something that you're going to end up building, And same thing here. You're starting as individual. Everything you're working on now, you're going to be doing individually. Same thing in level design. You're going to be building your level functionally, but then it's going to end up as a team. So just another thing just to keep in mind, keep in the back of your head. All right, so I'm going to go through basically Perforce and getting everything set up, a little bit of review. Hopefully some of this is review from you for design tools. I know you guys never connected to a server or really worked on like a Unity project with Perforce. It was more of just getting exposed to the interface, seeing what it looks like, checking out files, editing things, submitting it, going through the process. Now we're going to actually apply some of that. We're going to review it and also apply that into working on our project throughout the month. All right, so I'm just going to open up Perforce here. So for everyone on campus, and this is all documented in the playground assignment, but the server we're going to connect to is right here, gdnperforce.fullsail.edu:1337. All right, and all of the online students, just so you can see it on the screen, it's the same exact thing except the word Perforce is now resource. So I'll copy that and paste it in the GoToMeeting for you two. I got 2 online students joining us. All right, so that's the server address, and no, the 1337 is not by accident. That was actually a choice that was made. So your usernames, your username is going to be everything before the @ of your Full Sail email address. So whatever your Full Sail email is, take that, and that is your username. All right, so to create a workspace, because what a workspace is just a location on your computer. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time to talk about folder structure and locations and pathing on your computer, because it's definitely important. And it may not be something that you were ever taught or we ever taught you in this degree, but it's important to understand. And now with technology and things where a lot of this stuff is hidden, even things like file types or like file extensions, by default now in Windows 10, a lot of that stuff is hidden. So it's starting to become that to make it more user-friendly, you have to strip away some of the things that aren't required. But then that makes it much harder to understand what's going on if you're starting to develop for this. So we really need to understand that a workspace is just a location on your computer. It's just a file path somewhere that Perforce knows and can recognize. So I'm going to go ahead and hit New. It's probably going to ask you for your password. And everybody, your password right now is set to password. So you can, once you log in, you can go ahead and change that if you'd like to, and I do recommend doing that. It's never a bad idea. So this window is going to come up. And here you're going to see this is the name, basically what you want your workspace to be called. And here is your root. And the root is just, like I said, a location on your computer. So here you can see it says C, users, A. O'Connor, bless you, Perforce, some long, real wacky, this is basically your username, and then it creates some long, wacky string of, work PC dash some numbers. You can go ahead and change this, and we recommend just changing this to like your name or something representative. Just basically you just want to understand this is a file or this is a folder on your computer. This is a path that's remembered by Perforce. You can also hit this browse button and just select the folder that you want right here. So I'm just going to go ahead and go there and hit OK. And that one already exists. So I'm going to just call this Full Sail. I think I may already have a workspace called Andrew. Right. So then that you should see your workspace name change right there. Right. So now that folder is created on your computer. And I'm going to go ahead and use the one I already have set up. All right. And if anyone's following along with me, just definitely if you get stuck or you can't log in, let me know and we can try and get you caught up on the right direction. But everything I'm going over now, we can, you can work on setting everything up yourself in lab today. So feel free to follow along if you'd like, if you feel like you're up to speed, or also you can definitely just take notes and we can, work through everything in lab today. So when you get into the server, you'll see this this layout right here. You may see something that looks like this. So sometimes that little bar over there will get stuck. You'll see you can just click here and drag and drop this over here. So we can go ahead and open up Final Project, and you'll see this IND229 folder. This is us. This is where you're going to be working out of this month. But first, before we get into the class itself, we'll talk a little bit about the interface and as well as what some of these terms mean. So the depot versus the workspace. Anybody want to tell me what the depot is? And I already mentioned a little bit what the workspace is. Anybody have a guess?
Depot is long-term storage.
Long-term storage. It's a good guess. It's along the right direction.
Workspace is active storage. Things we're working on now.
Not quite, but I think I see where your train of thought is. So the workspace this is just your computer. This is local to your computer. So by default, you'll probably see your workspace is empty. And you'll even see on my workspace here, I have some stuff here, but on the depot, there's much more because I don't have everything. So the workspace is just my own copy of this somewhere on my computer. In the depot, this is shared. Everybody will see the same thing here. If all our permissions are the same, everyone will see the same files, and this is where everyone will submit to. So the workspace is just your own copy of that, your own folder structure, and the depot is what's shared between everybody. And one way to make a key difference that Perforce does is you'll notice these folders are blue, and the workspace ones are like this yellow manila color, almost like they are, right here. It's that same manila color. So the depot is the shared repository for everyone. And now up here, you'll see a lot of these buttons up here, these buttons here, and also this tray of different actions up here as well. Really, the actions one you'll probably be using most often, and you'll notice here where it says get latest, submit, checkout, add, delete, revert. If I could go to actions, I have a lot of those same things: get latest, get revision, checkout, delete, submit, revert. A lot of the same things, and I can also right-click and get those same options. So really, there's a lot of ways to do the same thing. Question? All right, so who can tell me what the command, if I want to go ahead and do a get latest revision, who can tell me what this is actually accomplishing? What does this do?
Update the folders or all the work in there is current.
Update what folders?
The folders that you clicked on.
Okay, so it'll be copying. What it's doing. You're correct, but what it's doing is copying the files, everything that's on the depot, onto the workspace. So it's just mirroring what's over there. So what everyone will want to do before, and this would be good before people start submitting work and things getting cluttered, you can go to the 1607 folder and right-click on it and get latest revision. So what this is doing is when you do that, you'll see this update over here on your workspace side as well. So that should copy all of your folder structure over to your computer when you do a right-click and get latest revision. Here it's saying no files updated, and that's, for me, that's because I already have the files, and I can show you a little workaround to solve a problem like that if that ever comes up. So once you go ahead and get latest revision, you can right-click on this, and right down here you'll see this option for Show in Explorer. I really like to utilize this feature, and you should really get in the habit of doing this, of just popping open this window. And this will just show you, this is just a path on your computer. Whatever you set up for your workspace, because here's my name of my workspace right here, this is just a path, and it's going to lead me right to that 1607 folder. So now I can navigate in here like I normally would and start to add files or make adjustments, whatever I'd like to do. But another thing to point out, and I'll definitely just like to, another little workflow tip I recommend, especially when working with Perforce, because you'll find yourself clicking through folders way too many times, is take your workspace right here, wherever the folder is, and just drag it into your quick access if you'd prefer, and that way you can just go ahead and click on that, and then you can just go to your folder real quickly. Just a little workaround. I like to utilize that. Thought I'd mention that. So now I want to go ahead and add my add a file to this folder, right? Because here's the same folder, and remember, this is just a location on our computer. So I'm going to go into this working folder, and here we have this Barack Obama example. I'm just going to go ahead and make myself a new folder. I'm going to name this my name. All right, and here I'm just going to create a text document. Okay, now inside here I'm just going to go ahead and just write something in here. So I'm just going to put my Skype contact if anyone wants to get a hold of me through Skype. And here's my Full Sail email. Save that and close it. All right, so this file is now inside of the working folder right here. So now I can come back to the working folder, and if I go to the workspace and open this up now, click on the right one, now you'll see here's this file right here, or this folder, right? This is the one I just created over here. Same exact file, just now it's being displayed in Perforce. All right, and one thing you'll notice is these symbols that are by the files themselves. And I have a link in the playground assignment, but there's this, if you go to just Perforce's documentation, they did a pretty good job of updating their most recent one. It used to be, because before they were bought out by Helix, they were their own company, and their documentation was not very good at all. And once this loads, really you don't have to read through all of this. The one thing that I wanted to show off, of course, please don't tell me it broke, is the icons. Let's see. Come on, internet, don't fail me. Failed me. All right, well, I'll see if I can get that to load. But the icons in Perforce themselves, and I can get you a reference. If this website is down, I'll find a reference that shows off what each icon represents. But you'll notice the difference between these two right here. So this is my contact info I just created. You'll see a little white piece of paper with no other information, right? Just a plain little white piece of paper. What that symbol represents is a file that's not yet been added to the depot. So that's a really quick indication that this file is not yet there. Oh, there we go. This file is not yet up there. So here is the icons page itself. And here's a really good short little description of each file and of each icon itself. And you may run into times where you see weird icons that you don't necessarily understand or have never seen before, because some are just out of the ordinary. You're not going to see them very often. It's good to just use this as a reference and not just freak out and panic when you see an icon that you've never seen before, right? Especially the lock. Sometimes files will randomly get locked, or students will somehow lock files and not understand how. It's just important to know that's just what that means or what that represents. Same thing with the yellow triangle or question marks. Really just good reference to have. So you can definitely, they're referencing the difference in folders. So really good understanding, a really just good little cheat sheet. And some of the stuff you'll see again, and that is a hint. So just make sure you review that document. So anyone know, if I want to now add this file to the depot, who knows what I'd want to do first? What was that? Not quite. Check out would be if it's already on the depot. I'm just going to right click on the file and see what our options are. Mark for add, right? So when I go ahead and hit mark for add, this window is going to come up. And you think, all right, here's a text box, I'm going to write my description. No, this is Perforce fooling you. You can click this to don't show this again. But what this is saying is if you already wrote a description in your change list, because you can like write a description and save it, and not yet submit it. It's not a very common thing to do, but you can do that. This isn't a text box. This would just display any text you've already written. And this is just basically saying what change list do I want to add this to. Because when I hit mark for add, it's not adding it to the depot. All it's doing is adding it to a change list. So over here so this is in the pending tab, and if any of these tabs aren't open, they're under actions, no, view. So view, here's you get your pending change list, history, submitted change list, a lot of different information that you can have available to you. Really, files, pending, and history are the three I usually just leave open all the time. And by default, you may see your pending list like this, where you can see everybody's pending change list that's here, and this isn't what we want. God bless you. What we want to do is just filter it by us, so we can just see our own change list. So if you hit this little filter down here, you can see user, and down here you can select, you could type in your user, or you can hit this little drop down arrow and do is current user, and then you can do workspace, is current workspace, because you want to make sure you're on the workspace that you're currently located on, which you can select from right here. So if you ever have no workspace selected, make sure you have one here. And really, if you're working on just one computer all month, just stick with one workspace. If things go crazy and something breaks, don't delete your workspace and start a new one. Just get in contact with me, or contact one of your peers that may be able to help you. But don't just freak out and create a new workspace, because all you're doing is setting yourself up for more problems later. And you may be working in files that are in the old workspace, and now you're trying to move them to the new one, and it's just a headache. So make sure you just have the one workspace for your one computer. If you do like to have a desktop at home, or if you have two laptops, you want to work back and forth, that's okay. Just make sure you understand each laptop is going to have its own workspace, and both workspaces are communicating with the same depot. So you can have one laptop, you add the files to the depot, you go over to the other laptop, you get the latest, and now those files are on the new one. So you can definitely communicate back and forth, and it's actually a really good thing to practice, because it's basically simulating what it's like working with a team. Because if you try and upload all of your work to the depot, like, all right, I got my Unity project on the depot. Now you go like, okay, I'm going to get it on my other computer, and you go and get it, and you're like, I'm missing half my project. Well, it's like, okay, well, you missed some of the files submitting. So you can work with multiple different computers. Just make sure you have separate workspaces for each one. And they do have to be named differently. If you may have already run into that, they have to be uniquely named. So now that we have this filter here, so we just see my default change list, and there's the file I've added. So here you'll see again the icons being really helpful with the little piece of paper with the red plus. And you want to guess, that means it's being marked for add. It's about to be added to the depot. So important to understand, when you're marking it for add, it's not just automatically added to the depot. This is important to know because we're submitting our assignments through Perforce, and yes, you can complain about it. You can not like me for it because we're not using FSO, but this is part of learning the tool, is using it throughout the month. So I know that it's different. We're not using FSO to turn in our work, but you have to understand how to add files to the depot to be able to understand Perforce. So now that it's in here in the change list, I'm just going to go ahead and submit. All right, and this little window is going to come up. It's basically, you need to write a description, and you can't just hit submit without writing anything. You actually need to add something. So really take this seriously when you do this. For some of these basic setup things, I mean, it is, yes, you're just doing something very simple, but just write it out what you're doing, because if you write basic things like blah or update or I fixed it, later when you get to a team setting and you're looking through your change list and like, all right, it broke here, but up here it says fixed it. You really want to have these descriptions clear of what you're actually doing and what you're actually changing. So if anything ever happens, you have a clear history log of everything that was submitted at certain times. So I'm just going to write something real simple. All right, so now you'll see that icon changed, and now it's a piece of paper with little lines on it and the green dot. And what the green dot represents is a file, where is it? File synced to the head revision. So that means on my computer, I have the most recent up-to-date revision. That's what the little green dot means. All right, so I see Andrew's got him in here also. Good stuff. So I'll talk a little bit about the folder structure here, and then I'll talk a little bit more about some of the uses of Perforce. So in our section here, so you guys are section 0 on campus. Online, you'll see whatever section you are, and you'll only see that one. That's so we don't do too much destruction. But inside the working folder, cool, we already see some more in here as well. This is where you're going to be working on your project throughout the month. So I really want to encourage people to be submitting a lot of work and checking in their work often, because again, this is about forming good habits. And if you're not using this, you can definitely run into some major problems in the next few months. I'm not trying to scare you, but I just want you to take this seriously and understand that this is a really powerful tool and very useful, and you need to utilize it very often. So you're going to be setting up your Unity project in here, and you're going to be making submissions and updating your work in here. The compiled folder, and you'll see these are named with the number and then an underscore and then the assignment. These are where you're going to be submitting the assignments themselves. So this is what I'm going to go into to actually do the grading throughout the month. So Unity project goes in your working folder. Compiled, this is where your assignments get turned in. If we take a little sneak peek into level design, it's the same thing, and we've done this collaboratively, so it's a workflow you guys get used to. Working folder, this is where your Unity project goes. Compiled, this is where you're going to be turning in your assignments. So it's a very common thing we're developing here, so I just want you to make that very clear. All right, any questions so far? How you guys doing? Good? one sigh. All right, not bad. All right, so let's say, for example, I want to go ahead and let's say I want to get Andrew Harvey's contact info. I want to copy it to my computer. So again, we look at my working folder. You see I only have these 2 files here, right? Or these 2 folders. So I'm going to go ahead and just right-click on his folder and get latest revision. Down here in the log, you'll see 1 file has been added. So come back to my workspace. There it is. I'm going to go ahead and show it in Explorer. All right, and there's that file. All right, so I can go ahead and open it. There's you got his phone number and his name. Cool. All right, so let's go ahead and say I want to add my add my extension onto here, right? So the first thing I want to do is I want to check out this file, right? I want to add it to a change list to say, hey, Perforce, I want to make a change to this file, because right now this is set to read only. This may not be a term that you're familiar with. Hopefully it is, but if you take a look at the properties of the file, you'll see this little attribute down here, read only. This basically means don't change it. You're not allowed to touch this. You can't make changes to it. So what we can do, if I come to Perforce and now check this out, you'll see a red little check mark next to the file. That means it's checked out by you. If it's a blue check mark, it means it's checked out by somebody else. And it's been added to this change list. So now we can make edits to it. So if I go ahead back to my file and take a look at the properties, you'll now see that checkbox is pretty much turned off. That is what checking it out does. Is it queues it up in your change list and allows you to make changes to the file itself. So now I'm going to come over here. Just going to make sure I don't write the wrong extension for you guys. 3817. And calling me on the phone is probably the worst way to get a hold of me, but I do check my voicemail. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save that. Come back to Perforce. All right, now that I've had that change, I'm going to go ahead and submit it. All right, adding extension. So now you'll see it was 1 file edited, and you also see that this number here changes. This now says 2 of 2. So now there is 2 versions of this file, right? This should be a little bit of review from Design Tools to where now if I want to take a look at the history, you can see again the symbols being helpful. Where this was when it was added, this is when it was edited, and over here is where it's displaying who edited the file, and then the description that was written for that change. So that 2 of 2 means that there's 2 versions, and you have the option to getting different versions of that same file. The way you do that is the option of get revision, which I'll talk about a little bit right now and a little bit again moving forward. So here you can basically say specify revision using, and you can get a revision number, you can get a date and time, you can get certain different aspects of the file based on when it was working. Say it was working at Thursday at 5 o'clock, so I'm going to get the revision at that certain day and certain time. So a really powerful, good way to go back to a certain point in time. And again, this only is helpful if you're actually submitting your work to Perforce often. If you work on your project all week and then Sunday night it completely breaks, if you haven't been submitting to Perforce, there's no way to get that back. But even if it's on the depot and it gets deleted, it's always there. It's like your Facebook account. Even if you want to delete it, it's always there waiting for you to come back. So if you submit to Perforce, then it's always going to be there. So just make sure that you're doing that often. So another thing that's very powerful is this force operation box, and I'm going to get to that right now. So say I got Andrew Harvey's contact info here, right? But say I took a look at it, but I no longer want it on my computer. Or say on accident you go and get latest on all of these, and you're like, oh no, I didn't want to get all of these, I just wanted my own, or I just wanted one. You want to come to this and just delete this file, or select this folder and just hit on your keyboard function delete to delete it from your computer. A very common mistake I think I see students make is they come to the workspace, and now you'll see when I hit refresh on the workspace that folder is now gone. When they accidentally get a bunch of files, they'll just come to this folder and be like, oh no, I don't want this, mark it for delete. So if I hit mark for delete and I hit OK, what is that actually doing? Anyone want to take a guess? Putting it in a change list, right? So I go to my pending change list. Here's all these files now that I have marked for delete. If you guys look at on your own computer, if you look on the depot, you'll probably be, man, who's this jerk that's trying to delete my files? That's because when you hit mark for delete, no matter if you're on the depot side or the workspace, doesn't matter. No matter where you are, when you hit mark for delete, you're deleting it from Perforce. You're not deleting it from your computer. So if you want to delete files, make sure you're always using a file explorer. That's a good reason why I wanted to pin this over here and why I show you guys the show and explorer. So it's just a really good feature to use and just always be working out of these browser windows rather than trying to mess around in Perforce. And all you have to do is just come back to Perforce and hit refresh, and things will be updated. So this isn't what I want, right? I made a mistake. So what you don't want to do is be like, oh no, I made a mistake. Oh well, submit. Instead, you want to correct this and just take a step back and be like, what did I do and how do I undo this? So if I just right-click on my change list here, we have some options. Anyone want to take a shot in the dark about which may be the option we want to do to basically undo the action we just did to get those changes out of that change list? I heard a few people say revert files. And that is correct. That is what we want to do. We want to undo these, back these out of the change list. Say we don't want to submit these changes. We want to keep the files the way they are. So when we hit revert, it's going to bring up this window basically saying these are the files I'm going to revert. You can revert some of them or revert partial amount of them, and just hit this revert button, and then it'll say down here 6 files reverted. It's undid out of the change list, and now you should see the files are no longer marked for delete. All right. So again, I'll come back over here, and I'm just going to go ahead and make sure that's not there. So I just have my folder on here. So now if I go to Andrew Harvey's contact info, I go to this folder, and I go ahead and get latest revision. So here you'll see that little icon there, and don't submit your change list yet. You'll break my point. So you'll see here that it looks like someone else has your file checked out. Whoever that is, don't submit it yet. You'll see here that the icon still shows that green dot, which means the latest revision of the file. So Perforce thinks I have the latest revision, even though I don't right now, right? I deleted it myself. but I want to get it again because I want to for some reason. So if I go to do get latest revision, it's going to tell me no files updated. And I'm like, well, what? I need to get the file. How do I get it? It's not letting me. So if I go to get revision, again, this brings up this little pop-up window, the same window where I was able to specify it based on a time or a date certain. If you hit this force operation right here, right here in the parentheses is telling you to replace the file even if you already have the revision. So you're telling Perforce, I don't care if you think I have this file already, give them all to me again. So this is really helpful to do, like say something is like completely broken with your project or something is wrong. You're like, all right, I'm just going to delete it from my computer and get the one from the depot because I know the one on the depot is working. This is the way to do that, is to just hit this force operation, and now it's going to say one file updated. So it's just basically copying everything again. So it's getting latest revision, and you're just forcing it to happen. Right. So I talked about the history. So history, yep, the pending list. So I can talk a little bit more about the class itself. So we talked, again, the compiled folder and the working folder. And you're also going to notice this IND229 content folder. This has a lot of the assignments in it for the class itself. So in here you'll see the entryway, there's some subfolders, and then below here these are just links to different documents, as well as here's the project template README. So this is basically just the controls of the character and the controls and all the features we have in here. So you definitely feel free to peruse this, and I think some of this stuff may be not updated. I'm going to get in contact with the level design instructor and see if he has like a Google Doc that's, I know like this has been changed. This is no longer the control, but still a lot of this is very much the same. So you can take a look at what we have available to you in the project template. And then also you'll notice down here is the Scraps Assets folder. So inside the Scraps Assets, we have the Asset Depot. So in the Asset Depot, this is a lot of Unity packages. These are all Unity packages in here. These are just assets we've collected from the Unity store or Turbo Squid, some that we've had interns made for us, some of them I made myself. It's really just been a collection of assets we've been building for a few years now that we've made available to you, because we don't want you guys to be spending a lot of time like modeling. If you want to do some modeling, awesome, I totally approve of that. But when you get to like level design and Des 3, you don't want to be like, oh, I didn't get my level design, I didn't get my level finished because I was modeling this wall for 10 hours. We want you to be prioritizing your time focusing on design, and then the aesthetics can come much later or at a different time. So we've really tried to provide a lot for you to get yourself started on the design sense. So inside the Asset Depot, you'll also see this little exe. You can play through this, and this has all of the assets laid out in an executable, so you can just visually see them before having to actually download them. This whole Asset Depot is about I think it's about 2 gigs. So just make sure that you may want to do this off campus, or just make sure you give yourself enough time, or maybe do it in small chunks rather than all at once, because there is a lot of stuff in there. All right, and now here's the project template. So this is what we're going to be setting up this month. So this is what you've been given, what you can start with. So the first thing you want to do is right-click on that and get latest revision to copy that over your computer. And there has been updates. So if you're retaking this class or you've gotten the project template, make sure that you get the latest this month and you're starting off fresh, because we're always making updates and making changes to it. So what you want to do is move this project template into your own location and set this up for the month to work out of. So when you right-click on this, and again, show and explore, and here's that project template folder. So I can open it up, and you see some files, and you shouldn't see this file. I'm just going to delete it because you haven't opened it already. The only reason mine was there because I work on the project template. We make modifications to it every month, so I'm actively inside it. But you guys should just see these 3 folders, right? So .vs, this is a Visual Studios plugin. Anyone that's using Visual Studios, this is part of the thing that's just generated by Unity, so that's fine to stay there. Assets, in here, we see a bunch of folders, right? So this ASCORE folder, stay out of this one. You don't really need to mess around with this too much. You can search for things. You will be, using some trigger volumes and utilizing the scripts, but don't go in there and start modifying and changing things just yet. Just keep your hands off for that. You will eventually start to make adjustments to things, but this is like our folder to work with. Everything else you can start to change. Actually, the Morph 3D, stay out of there. But really, we can get further into the folder, but just know that this is a clean template. So if things ever break or ever go wrong, you can always go back to Perforce and get your template fresh again. Is there a question?
Yeah, every time I keep trying to show it in Explorer, it only goes back to my name, my file. No, it doesn't show the rest of it.
Have you gotten the latest? Yeah, it's about 1,300 or 1,500 files for the template itself. All right, so alrighty, so inside the project template, all right, so the assets folder, this is what contains all the assets for your project, right? So this can contain anything from scripts to scene files to textures, materials, animation clips, controllers, basically just anything that exists in Unity is a file. And you'll also notice that Unity creates these .meta files also. These are really important and not things you can just ignore. So even folders, you'll see these are all the folders, all below there, these are all meta files that Unity creates for all those as well. If you open up the scenes folder, you'll see basically a .unity file, and then, or like here's my danger zone scene and my hub scene. These are .unity files, even though it's not being displayed. But then here is that Unity file, or the .unity.meta. So every single thing, no matter what it is, has a meta file attached to it. And what these meta files actually contain, in a nutshell, is the information and the components and the dependencies of that object, right? So if a terrain object has multiple different materials on it, the meta file understands what materials are on that piece of terrain. If you have a prefab and your prefab has a mesh and a script and animations, the meta file actually contains all that information about where those other dependencies are located. So if these aren't submitted to Perforce, you're going to run into some issues. So make sure that you understand that these exist and they need to be submitted to Perforce. And also, if you're working on a script, it's a good habit to get into. Check out the script and check out the meta file, work on the script, and then submit them. It doesn't take that much longer. It's not that big of an extra step to get into. Just understand that those are files that need to be changed, or those files that are being changed that need to be checked out to in Perforce as well. All right, so then project settings. A lot of these are basically just, you can take a look at them and understand what is actually, what that information is being contained. So a lot of these are, you'll see a .asset file. So basically, like, your player input, your input manager. This controls all your input on the keyboard. Basically, your tag manager, the connection settings, the graphic settings. Basically, just different settings that you can set yourself and are also default to Unity. So these we also need to get onto the server. So with this folder structure, you can go ahead and right-click, and I'm going to copy the folder. All right. So now that I have that folder copied, right, and everything that's inside of it is being copied as well, I'm going to go back to my working folder. So IND229 working, inside of my folder right here, right, where I put my contact info, same folder before, I'm just going to go ahead and paste my, my project there. So it's going to create a project template. Don't just keep it project template. Please rename it. And everything in the class is basically last name, first name, and then whatever the thing is. So I'm just going to do last name, first name, project. All right, so now inside there, now you'll see I have my assets and my project settings and that .visual studios file there, or folder. So now what we can do is, because we know that this project is set up and it's been given to you, before I even get into Unity, I'm going to come back to Perforce, and I'm going to I'm going to submit what I have so far. All right, so I'm going to go back to my workspace side and hit refresh. There's that little folder there. So I just want to add these files to the depot. So I can just right click on it and do mark for add. Another way to do the same thing, you can use this button up here, mark for add. I can go actions, mark for add. Even cooler way is you can click on this folder and drag it onto the change list you want. And it's going to mark all those files for add. So now there's 1,300 files in the change list. And now you'll see right there, files open for add. Right click and hit submit. All right, it may take a second or two to actually submit them. That's okay. It is a lot of files at once, but that just will definitely show you that you don't want to wait a long period of time. You don't want to just try and add 5,000 or 10,000 files at a time. Do it in increments. Like actively, whatever you've accomplished, whatever you've worked on, submit that to the depot. A good rule of thumb to stick by is how much work do you feel like losing? To me, it's like 10 or 15 minutes. That's what I'm comfortable with before I start wanting to punch a wall or walk away from my computer for an extended period of time, right? You don't want to lose hours upon hours or days upon days of work. So if you submit something like you finally get that thing you've been working on for a while working, submit it to Perforce so it's there. Nothing's gonna break it. Alrighty, any questions at all so far? Bless you. No? All right.
When's the video going to be up? Because I'm having a power issue.
It'll be up pretty much right when lab starts.
You shouldn't confuse my lack of questions with understanding.
Okay. Does that mean you understand? Okay. I know a lot of it right now is like going through a lot of the concepts, and you really won't everything won't click until you actually start to do it yourself. But once you do, you'll start to understand a lot more. And really, this is the month for making mistakes and almost breaking things, because everything we're working on is very contained to where each assignment is like each week. So if something goes wrong and it completely breaks, you can definitely just like scrap it and start over and still get that assignment accomplished in a reasonable amount of time. So it's a good habit to get into practice now, because what you don't want to have happen is you get to the level design where you're working on one month-long project, and say in month 3, you weren't submitting to Perforce, and now all of a sudden all of your work is gone for one reason or another. I may be sounding pessimistic, but you have to understand whenever things have an opportunity to go wrong, they probably will. So you have to give yourself time for troubleshooting, right? You can't just be so crunched like, all right, I have 2 hours to get this done, and now something happens, you need to take a half an hour to fix it. You have to plan for that. So just make sure you're submitting your work often, and you'll get the hang of it this month. If I take a look at some of the previous months in here, really the history is where I can start to look and start to tell who was really active and who was started to practice and who was just going through some of the assignments, right? So it's like things like this where that was me, but like long lists like this where you can tell they're actively submitting their work to Perforce. So I can only encourage it so much, and then at some point it's about you guys wanting to learn this on your own. So really, I'm not like grading you on this, but really like long lists, like really every time you're working, every day, you should be submitting here often, really just to get the hang of it, as well as back up your work, because you never know when something could happen. So this is still going. So I was going to go ahead, and once this got uploaded to Perforce, I was just going to open it up and then let you guys take a short little break, because I just wanted to go over a few things in the project, and then I'm going to cover the LDD. So one point I wanted to make while this is still uploading is once you have your project here, which it looks like it's there, it may just be still doing its thing. So once this is up here, oh, it's the wrong month. How's it there already? That's why, because it's not. Oh, yours is here? Okay, cool. So the point I wanted to make is I don't have the latest of this, but when you see the project right here, a really good habit to get into is if it's a scene file, you can just double click right on the scene and it's going to open up Unity right from Perforce. This may sound like a thing that doesn't really make any deal, like why can't I just go to Unity and open up my file or open up my folder how I want to. You can, but you just want to make sure that you are actually opening the right project. Like look, I have multiple things named project template, and I want to just make sure I'm in the right project. So it's a good habit to get into. So looks like mine just finished. So I'm going to go to my assets here, and I'm just going to open up the scenes, and you're right here, just double click on the hub scene. And Unity is just opening up. This window may come up where it's been opened in a different project. Just go ahead and hit continue, and when Unity rebuilds, it will go ahead and do its thing. So over here you'll see, yep, here comes my window building. Another thing you'll notice, if you go ahead and look at your project itself, you're going to see these other two weird folders that are now here that weren't here before, right? When we added these to the depot, we just had assets and project settings. Those are the only two, or we should also have the .vs folder, but those are the only ones there. When we open the project, this library and temp folder are being created for us. So in the library folder, you're going to see this metadata folder. Don't get this confused with .meta files. They are similar, but they are very different, to where there's just, I don't know what this stuff does. I just know that you need it. It's important. It is always running in the background, and Unity is always changing some of these files. When you make changes in your scene, when you make changes to certain things, these files are getting changed, right? You can just see this. Here's a shader cache and script assemblies. If this stuff really, like, you're interested in this, you can, I'm sure there's documentation about what each one of these files are doing. Same thing goes for the temp folder. But what's important to understand is these are unique to each computer and local to your machine. So if we go ahead and try and add these to the server, we know that when files are on the depot, they're marked as read-only. So when they're marked as read-only, Unity can't change them, right? So when Unity is trying to change files it doesn't have access to, it just crashes. Like if you have your library folder accidentally on the depot, Unity just won't open. So the way to correct that is you delete your, mark for delete your library folder and then submit that. And then you may have to actually delete your local one. So if things ever break with this, you can always just delete this folder and reopen your project, and these two folders are going to recreate themselves. All right. So the project's just opening up. Why don't you guys go ahead and take a short break. Come back at about, I'll give you guys 15 minutes, so come back at about 10:15, and we'll cover a little bit of stuff in the project template, and we're also going to go over the level design document. Here I am in the hub in my Unity scene. So you'll notice in the project you'll have the scenes folder, and in the IND folder these are the assignments you're going to be working on throughout the month. So you don't need to actually create any scenes. We've given you everything that you're going to be working in. So here is the hub. Make sure you have the hub open. Is anyone already familiar with the multi-scene editing feature in Unity? No? You guys looking at me like I'm speaking a new language. So this is a new feature from Unity 5.3, and yes, you guys are super spoiled. This is not how it always was. But with the 5.3, which I think came out, I think it was the beginning of last year or about a year ago now, so they've made updates since then, but that allowed you to have multi-scene editing. So the reason why that's so awesome and so useful for you is that you're able to edit multiple scenes at one time. Before you'd have to save a scene, go into one and adjust things and actually like write down the coordinates of certain geometry or use reference pieces to make sure things are lining up properly. Because what we can do now is say we want to take we want to work on our visuals and settings scene. You go ahead and take this scene and drag and drop it right into Unity or right into the hierarchy. And you'll see that it loads in. So that it looks like here's the scene itself. You'll see these two separate scenes, and now this little platform gets loaded in. So each one of these is just an empty platform to you to work in, as well as some other things that we're doing. Like there's a message volume and a lighting volume, things like that. But it's basically just an empty platform to you to work on your assignments. So now we're able to actually edit both of these scenes at once, right? So I could select something from the hub scene, I could select something from the other scene, and really make adjustments to both scenes at once. Very, very powerful. You can move these to make sure things are lining up just how you want it. Really, really helpful. So when you're working in this with multiple scenes open, make sure that you right-click on the scene you want to do and set active scene. So when you do this, when you hit set active scene, you'll notice that that one becomes bold. And now anytime you create an object, that object will be created in the scene that is active. So just make sure you're conscious of that if you have multiple open, because sometimes you'll get working and you'll notice, oh crap, everything I just made is in the hub. So not a big deal. You can actually just, if I undo the delete, I can just take that cube, maybe like, oh, I want that in the hub. I can just go ahead and drag this, and now it's in my other scene. And you'll notice the little asterisk next to it. That all that basically means is the scene is not saved. There's changes that have been made that are not saved. So this doesn't mean that if you have multiple scenes in here that it's gonna, if you make an executable, which you guys are familiar with, you should have made an executable before, hopefully. No? Okay, cool. We get to learn something new. So when we make a build or we make an executable, right, a standalone exe to run our game, it's not going to have both of these scenes in here. So you really need to understand the difference between making the build and just doing edits. So when you have multiple scenes in your hierarchy, you're just making edits to them. It has nothing to do with the build itself. So what we want to do in our build, what we want to have, is we want to eventually have both of these scenes loading at once. So if I go ahead and hit play, and I'll turn make sure maximize is on, it might be a little slow because I have GoTo running, but you'll notice that there's that other scene, right? Two completely separate scenes, but it shows me it's just one consistent playthrough, one cohesive experience. And starting to understand this now is going to better get you ready for the future, because right now these are all basically, this is our little hub and this is our little test scene. Eventually these are going to be separate student areas, or basically parts of your level, and you're going to connect them to each other. So rather than just having these little test platforms, you're going to actually be editing multiple scenes and multiple parts of a level together. So this is what we want in our build, right? When I make an executable, I want to have both of these parts of my scene together, and I want to load them simultaneously, or additively at the same time, is the word that Unity likes to use. So you'll see in the hub scene, there's a lot of stuff going on, but you're going to see this ASCORE level manager. All right, so all this is an empty game object with a script on it. So you'll see this is a very common naming convention you'll see in the industry. Anything that says manager on it is most likely just an empty game object with scripts on it, and those scripts are doing something to affect the world or affect the build at runtime or something. So you'll see if we just take a look at this script, it's not very extensive, but this is a good habit to get into. If you're not sure what's going on, you don't need to be able to produce this yourself, but it's a good idea just to read the script and start to get used to looking at it, and then you can actually start to just piece together what it's doing. And you can see most of the stuff is commented. This is very well done by the level design instructor. So basically what's happening is we don't want this running in editor only when we build our project. So if it's not the application editor, so basically if it's a build, run the rest of this if statement, right? So for each scene name in our array, load them additively. So we're basically doing scene manager.load scene, and we're just loading that scene additively. And we're doing that in this right here, this element, right? This is our strings, our scene names, right? So here's public string scene names. And we can make this bigger or smaller depending how many scenes we want to load at once. Right, so if we have 4 people on our team, we want to make this 4 so we can actually type in the names of the scenes that we want. Right now we only want 1. So let me close Visual Studios. All right, and actually before I go any further, what I want to do is, let me just remove this. Since I'm actually going to make changes to this and I have it on Perforce, I'm going to go ahead and actually make adjustments or make changes to, or actually make submissions to Perforce in my working folder. All right. So the things I'm going to change is I'm going to actually change the hub scene. So I'm going to go to the hub and I'm going to check out these two files. Remember, check out the scene and check out the meta file. All right. And I'm also going to go into the project settings. And I'm going to change the editor build settings. So this isn't in the assignment itself. I walk you through a little bit of a process, but I want to show you guys this way because it's a good habit to get into. Check out the files you want to work on them, and then submit them. Because very often you'll be in Unity and working, and you're not even realizing what you're working on. The most memorable experience I have, I was working in Unity Lab, and I was working with a student in Unity. He had a script. He's like, I have problems with my script. Can you help me work on it? I was like, okay. We worked on a script. It was referencing some other script somewhere. I'm like, okay, it looks like you're referencing this other script. Go find where that is in your project. And he says to me, how do I know I wrote that script? And I just collected myself, and I'm like, well, did you write the script? And he started to become very overwhelmed because he couldn't remember where it was located or if he wrote it. He was just trying to work through the problems. But it's important you understand when you're in Unity and there's a lot of things you can be doing at one time, to always make sure you're understanding what it is you're changing and what you need to affect in other programs, because Unity and Perforce are very separate things. Unity is trying to serve multiple other pieces of software like Visual Studios and MonoDevelop, and there's a lot of other things it's trying to support. And sometimes they don't always work well with each other, so it's up to you guys, the user, to be able to communicate between the two pieces of software. So the reason I checked out the build settings is because that's one of the things that we need to actually change to get our build to load multiple scenes. So I checked out the hub and I checked out the build settings. And the reason I checked out the hub is because this level manager is a game object in our scene. So that's why our hub is going to change, is because the level manager is going to change. So what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and drop my scene back in there. So I'm just going to drop in the, got to drop it into the hierarchy, because if you drop it into the scene window, it's just going to load this scene by itself. All right. So in the level manager, I got to change this, and you can't drag and drop. We don't have that functionality in there. It's not as easy to do with scene files as is with other Unity assets. You actually have to type in the name. So make sure you're spelling this properly, and you can actually just like select this name and copy it. Control C, go back here just to make sure you're not spelling it wrong. All right, so now what this is going to do is, if we take a look at our script again, all this is doing is just, when we're in a build, it's going to load these additively, which just means both are going to exist at the same time. All right, that's all the script is doing. So with that, we also need to go to the build settings. So in the build settings, let's go ahead and delete all these. This is basically the scenes in the build. So in our case, both our scenes are going to be loading at the same time. But say we're actually making a game. We're making a small game where it has 10 levels, right? In the build, all 10 levels are going to be present in there. Maybe we have a main menu scene. All that stuff is going to be in there, but it's not loading simultaneously, right? We play level 1, that's one scene. When we beat it, we load level 2. So it's loading them sequentially, but they're all included in the build. Does that make sense? So the build settings is just what are all the scenes that are included, and the level manager, all the level manager is doing is just saying load these two at the same time. So it's a way to have multiple scenes open, and this is very common. Massive games like Assassin's Creed and like big sandbox games, they'll actually have basically a chunk of their world is a zone scene. So they're loading multiple. Basically, if you're far away from one, they unload this one. If you're close to this one, you load this one. So there's a lot of give and take going on at the same time. And it's just almost like this little dance of when they're loading and unloading, but they're all included in the build settings. So you can have, if you have both of your scenes open or however many you want to include in your build, you can go ahead and just hit this add open scenes, and you'll notice that both of the scenes get loaded in there and populated. All right, so that is the two things you need to change to get your build to have multiple scenes in it: the ASCOR level manager and the build settings. So we're going to do this now just as a test. Basically, the first playground assignment is setting up your working project or setting up your folder, and then also just being able to show that you can make a build with multiple scenes and you know how to make an executable and also submit it to Perforce. So it's a small assignment, but it's a lot of setup because later on you're actually going to have an assignment where you have to make sure you have a build with your entryway executable that includes both scenes. So you have to make sure you understand that just changing it just in the build settings isn't what you want. You need to change it also in the level manager to load them simultaneously. So once that's done, I'm going to go ahead and hit build. And now it's going to basically open up and say, where do you want this to build? And by default, it's going to be submitting it to your project, but we don't want to do that. We actually want to put it in the submission folder. So into the playground folder, I'm going to create a new folder. All right, and then select this folder. And now basically just name my executable. So again, just last name, first name, playground. And this isn't an actual physical playground. One student actually submitted one time it was like a jungle gym set that looked like he either modeled or downloaded from the asset store. We're not making a physical playground. It's just called that because this is like a testing ground for some of your assignments as well as any mechanics. So maybe you want to do some type of mechanic, like I want to have a level with pressure plates or some type of, I don't know, some type of system. You can come to this project and actually prototype that and test that to see, is this something I know how to do, or am I moving in the right direction, or am I just confused and lost? So that's what it means by playground. It's just an experiment zone and an opportunity to test out some of your own ideas. So now this window should automatically open. So if I go ahead and double click on my executable here, online student commented, no monkey bars. Gotcha. All right, so now when I load up my executable, it should be just how it was in the editor, right? Where here's my hub scene that the player starts in. And now behind me, I should have my visuals and settings scene. And as I walk into it, I have the text volume, right? So this is two scenes loaded simultaneously in one executable, right? This is a standalone build, and this is what you'll submit to Perforce. And really, the reason I have you do this is like, why is he making me go through all of this for just 1%? Really, this is like the benchmark for level design and Des 3. All you do, every milestone, you're submitting an executable. So if you guys don't know how to do it or you're not experienced with it, it's a big fundamental issue and a fundamental problem you'll have to solve. So it's good to understand what to do now. Also, this data folder that you'll see it's accompanied with this is really important. You can't just remove this, or like even if I rename this, say I put a 1 on the end, and now see my executable and my data folder are not completely different, but they're different names. If I try and run this is the error I get. And if you do this will result in a 0 for either your playground assignment or your entryway, right? So basically, I can't run this executable without the data folder. So this would be the same thing. Yes, I just changed the name, but if I delete that, even if it's the same name and I delete it or something, I'm still going to run into the same issue. So make sure when you submit this to Perforce, you're not just submitting the executable, you also submit the data folder. So that being said, let's go back to Perforce, because I've got my I've got my hub scene there, which I checked that out because I changed the ASCOR level manager and also the project settings there. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit submit. Say so submit that to my project. That was going in my working folder. All right, and now I'm going to go to the compiled folder. Let's go over to the workspace side. Compiled, playground, there's my new folder, and there's my executable and the data folder, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and take this folder I created, drag it into the default list. It found all those files. There's a lot, but that data folder does contain a good amount of files. Again, don't ask me what each one does, but they are required to actually allow the build to run. So now I'm just going to go ahead and submit that. All right, and now I'm set up and ready to go for the month. So I've made an executable, I've made changes to my project, and I've submitted them to Perforce. So everything that I just did is now on Perforce, to where everything that I did that on my computer is now active on the depot, that everyone could get that same changes, where you could open up my project and select my level manager and see this plugged in here. So really get in the habit of, when you're making changes to your project, submit them to Perforce at the same time. So now another good thing to do to get in the habit of testing is don't just, you see there when when my executable was done, I didn't just submit to Perforce, be like, all right, I'm done. I actually opened it and played it. Sounds very simple, but something that's very commonly overlooked. And you'll run into issues like your data folder doesn't match the name, or it isn't loading. But to take that a step further, what you can do is have either one of your peers get it off the depot and test it, or you can actually just delete it yourself. Oh, it's open. There we go. Don't know why it's giving me that problem. Open in Visual. Oh, it's open in Perforce. Oh, it's still adding? Oh, that's why it's still being added. Oops. I just deleted it while it's trying to be added. Let's see what happens. But anyways, the point I was making is you can always, once it's on the depot, once it's submitted, you can always delete it off your local computer and then right-click and do a get revision and force it, just to test and make sure what's on the depot is actually what you want. So it's a good rule of thumb to just make sure you're testing what you're submitting and not just calling it a day as soon as the executable is done. So any questions at all about the project itself or any of that process? So you guys can go into the danger zone. So this is a scene, let's see if it's, yeah, so this is basically just a small little test and a little display of what the character can do and what we've provided for you. You'll see these meshes around everywhere. These are level blocking meshes. You'll see them up at the top right here, this little drop down. We're going to cover more of that on Thursday, but you'll notice here that everything in this world was created with the level blocking meshes, and really you're able to do a lot with this small little system. And really the grav null here, this is another piece of technology that we've provided for you, and really what you're going to be designing around. So the grav null can pick up certain rigid bodies and have physics. You can pick them up with left click and right click to throw them. So this is really what you're able to design with. There's a lot of different opportunities and different setups you can create with just this system alone. So this is what you're going to be designing for. So third person, can do some platforming, has collectibles, has this grav null, can interact with physics objects. And we're going to be showing you examples throughout the month. But this is the type of game that you're going to be designing for. So a linear experience is really what you want to be shooting for. So really good designers are going to just take this and take the ideas they want and make them fit into here, right? And it's going to work. There's going to be some hiccups, but a great designer is going to take this for what it is and design around it and make an experience that fits within this. And maybe some of your ideas are overscoped or not quite feasible for this setup or this experience. So don't just try and shoehorn like, I want to make a sandbox game. I'm going to make an open world game. I don't care what he says. The player's going to go wherever they want. They can do things out of order. Stay away from that type of gameplay because it makes it very difficult for students to communicate all that information to players, right? So the companies like Ubisoft and Rockstar that have hundreds of people and millions of dollars and years of production time to make these big open world sandbox games that are fun to play, but just out of our scope. We don't have the time for that. So we want to create more of a linear experience where players, experience everything you've built. So don't hide your best work. Don't shy away from making the player experience everything. Giving them too many options takes a lot of time, and it's very difficult to communicate to players where it is you want to go. So jump in the playground and mess around with it, get a sense of feel for what the player can do and what the Gravnol is capable of. And then really just take a look at the environment as well and everything that's capable with just the level blocking meshes themselves. And really just start to get inspired about what you can create and what you're envisioning for what the player can experience. And you can definitely feel free to peruse through I told you not to change anything in here, but you can definitely take a look at some of the stuff that's going on a little bit behind the scenes, as well as maybe you want to take a look at the character and some things. Don't mess with anything, but at least start to understand what's going on, and we can talk about it more throughout the month. Question? Oh, definitely. Yeah, anything you want to change to the environment or the world, feel free to test some of that out for sure. And when we're going to shift gears a little bit and start to talk about the level design document, really make sure that you're starting to think about setups for the environment and not ways you can change the character. So it's like saying you want to, that Sony just hired you and you want to work on, they're hiring you to work on Uncharted 5, right? And they say to you, all right, you want to design a level, you're making level 3 for Uncharted. And you're like, okay, in level 3, Drake gets, jump boots and a jetpack and, all of this stuff that just doesn't fit with Uncharted. And they're going to be, you think they're going to say to you, okay, that's fine, you can add a jetpack just for your own level. You're going to be like, no, he doesn't have that type of stuff. So don't make changes to the character. Think about ways that you can have experiences in the environment that don't impact the character. A great example of that is like double jump. So you're like, I want to have double jump at my level, but then that happens. Well, what about if he gets to later areas or other students' areas? Now he can jump higher. It's going to break a lot of what the other students have designed. So a workaround for that would be maybe having jump pads or some collectible the player gets that gives him a heightened jump for 10 seconds. So it doesn't persist throughout the whole level. So start to think about ways like that. There are ways to accomplish what you want without actually making changes to the player. So I'm just going to talk a little bit. One thing I just wanted to cover in the LDD, we're going to go over a lot more on Thursday, but the only thing I wanted to mention to you now is just about the difference between a mechanic and a setup, and then compared to the player. So let me just pull up the LDD. So let me see if I can test my skills of the classes. From GD1, Game Design 1, you guys covered about mechanics a little bit, right? Question?
Yeah, before mechanics. Are we allowed to add a very simple AI system to this in our level? Or do you want it to do
No, if you'll see in the ILA assignment for today, and make sure everyone is doing the ILA assignments. Those are tied to your attendance and part of the standard of Full Sail. So make sure you're doing the ILAs. The ILA today is reading the creative vision. So we're working on the game Scraps, and it will give you this backstory and a little bit of a gist of what it is, what type of game it is you're designing for. And one of the things you're going to stay away from is there's not going to be AI in the game. And that's basically to protect you guys from yourselves. Because at this point, you probably don't know too much about AI or how to develop it. You could maybe buy something off of the asset store, but where's that really getting you? There's a whole other class. You're going to learn AI for a whole month. So really we're just protecting you from yourselves, because otherwise your level will become too complex and you wouldn't be able to get it accomplished in the time we have. So yeah, so mechanics. Everybody have any ideas about some mechanic, the difference between a mechanic and say a player's feature?
The mechanic is a rule.
A rule? Okay.
Player's feature is change.
That's a good analogy. I like that.
Like for Mario, jumping is a mechanic.
Okay.
Size is a rule.
Gotcha. That's a really Yeah, that's a really good analogy, definitely. So the way the player uses that mechanic throughout the level, those, huh? Yeah, those are setups, right? Those are, I like to refer to those, myself and Mr. Gasway. You guys will meet real soon. He's right out the door. Or we refer to those as setups or player interactions, right? So it's how you're using that mechanic throughout the level that makes it compelling and interesting. So let me just. So another really good use, this you'll see in a student level. He had a mechanic that was throughout the level, the player, or there's an interaction where fire can be put out with water. That was his mechanic throughout the level. So it was about, okay, well, how am I utilizing that mechanic? What are the ways I'm actually doing it? So you want to start to think about IPM, right? Introducing the player to this, practicing it later on, and mastering it. IPM, that's what that stands for. Basically, giving the player this introductory phase to it where it's very safe. Like in Mario, when you play the first level of Mario, you just see a brick above the player's head. There is like a Goomba that's right there beside the player, but it's very safe. The player isn't even told to press A to jump. They just start to figure it out on their own. They can learn to jump in a very safe way. Later on in the level, there's a gap that the player needs to jump to get over or they won't progress. That's checking and understanding, okay, the player knows how to jump. Later on, you can add more hazards or longer jumps to make it even more difficult. But what's important to understand is the difference between that mechanic and the setup itself. So when you're doing your brainstorming, which that is the first assignment where you start to just come up with ideas, really it's just about barfing ideas onto paper, coming up with ideas, concepts for your level, anything goes. It's about understanding that you're writing setups and actual interactions. What is the player doing? You should be able to describe that sentence to someone, and they should be able to visually in their mind see what the player is doing in that short snippet of time. So saying, the level feels dark and dim, or it's very dark in the level and the player uses the flashlight. Well, that doesn't describe the actual interactions. That's just explaining something about the level. So start to think about the actual setups and the interactions that are going on throughout the game, because that's what's important. That is what game design is fundamentally about, is about the player experience. So we don't care about what it looks like yet. You don't have to write in your setups how you're actually going to code this stuff or how you're going to build it. You just need to write what the player is going to experience in that short amount of time. So in lab, we're going to do a small little brainstorming activity so you guys start to understand what we're looking for and making sure you're moving in the right direction. But before that, you have to make sure that you've read the creative vision. So that's going to be the first assignment for today. So that's going to be, make sure you do that over lunch or before you get back to lab. So that way we can start to get going on the brainstorming and coming up with ideas. So this is the one assignment where you probably came to school. Maybe some of you thought, like, I want to work on video games. I'm going to, come up with awesome ideas. I'm going to get paid for it. I'm sure you probably learned by now that job doesn't exist unless you're a millionaire or run the company. So this is the one assignment in the whole degree where you get to be that idea guy. You can write down any ideas you want, come up with a lot of cool ideas, 100 different concepts, and then you go to the level design document, start to refine that and scope down, okay, what is feasible, what do I know to, what can I accomplish, what is possible in the amount of time I have. But the brainstorming, anything goes. And remember, keep in mind, player setups and interactions. Everyone clear about what I mean by that? So hopefully I don't see anything about the character now carries a flamethrower or the character can triple jump. The player can slide. All right, cool? All right. I think I overwhelmed him again.
You do, every month.
Every month. So as you're probably aware, that most of the lectures in here are intense. There's a lot of information to cover. This is the beginning, especially the first week. I'm not lying to you when I say the first week is very intense. So you guys do have a break. You get that spring break week off. So use that to your advantage. You don't have to work over that, but you have an extra chunk of time to get yourself prepared and mentally ready for this, because the first 2 weeks is pretty intense of this course. So same thing for Thursday. When you come back, I know we're all ready to take break. Trust me, I'm ready to take a break too. But there's still a lot more information to cover, and I wanted to get you guys ready to go for designing your level and preparing yourself for working throughout this month. So read through some of the assignments. You'll notice on FSO that everything is open right from the beginning. So if you want to start to work through everything, or maybe over break, you're already ready to go and you want to start working on some of the later assignments, you're ready to go and you can do that. So this is like a portfolio class, so you can work at your own pace. Yes, there are deadlines, but if you want to get ahead, feel free to do so. Again, also, they all are numbered. Besides the ILAs, they all go in sequential order, and that's so you can just work through one at a time and work your way down the list. So it is a very intense class. I'm not going to lie to you there. There's a lot to do. I do know you guys are taking another course, but if you work throughout the months and turn in every assignment, you'll be in good shape. So just make sure that you're contributing and participating, and if you have questions or problems, definitely come to me as soon as you know about them. Don't wait and sit on it and wait till the assignment's due. Make sure you come to me as soon as you know there's any issues. All right? So yeah, again, the creative vision discussion, read through the creative vision and also do the discussion, and that's due, I think it's due tomorrow. I gave you guys an extra day on that, but we make sure that you read the creative vision by lab. So we're going to do in a little exercise with the brainstorming, and lunch is going to be from 11 to 1. So we share a room with Des 3. So this is a good thing because, and this is Mr. Gazaway, by the way, bless you. This is a good thing because you guys get to see what they're working on. So they're 2 months ahead of you guys, and they're already been through level design, and today they're about to form teams and get together. So you can see the chaos ensue and start to see their levels and how they're transitioning through their month. Also, this is really great because they can contribute and give you some feedback on your work, as well as you can play through their levels and give them some feedback. So we're very fortunate to collaborate with another class and share a room with another class that's directly tied to what we're doing. So they have lecture from 11 to 1, and then we share a lab from 1 to 5. And I like to let you guys go around 4:30. We work straight through. If you want to take a 5 or 10 minute break, feel free, but then we'll work straight through and then let you go at 4:30. So if you guys don't have any other questions or any other issues right now, I'll let you guys go to lunch and take the time to read through the creative vision and come back at 1, and I'll take attendance at 1:15.